does this leadership deficit come from in the country? I mean, one would say we had good examples from the likes of Nelson Mandela, but now it seems like there's such a huge gap in terms of, those priorities that you speak about. I say this also because, we know of the exposures even in the healthcare system by Dr. Tim DeMaio, for example, talking about the Rahima Musa Children and Mother and Children Hospital. And I say this because I know that Dr. Nelson Mandela was very passionate about children. We see that even with the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. But if a hospital that is meant to care for babies, newborns, is in those conditions, there surely is a leadership problem in the country, and healthcare is just one of them. But where do you think that this leadership deficit then comes from?
I think we lingered for a long time. We created the Messiah way of thinking about leadership. There's someone to save us. Madiba was one such. When Madiba came in, we thought he's going to save us. So when we thought he failed us after 5 years of service, then we called him names. Similarly, with President Beki, President Zuma, and it's no different with President Ramaphosa. And I think until such time that communities take leadership upon themselves to say, I am the leader, I will lead wherever I am given an opportunity to lead. When Madiba was addressing nurses many months ago, he said something about how it doesn't matter what station you're given in life. If you can, just give it your best shot to try to deliver a service that people can be proud of, deliver the dignity that we've been fighting for every time. We will then get a country that's better. The second thing is our leaders take things personally. Whenever you point out there's a problem, you will be blacklisted from this list, you won't then be given these opportunities. Therefore, people keep quiet because people don't want to be pointed out. You are found wanting here. You need to do something about it. The doctor at Rahima Musa, to have been treated the way he was, that right. Even his colleagues then had to stand up and say, you're not going to suspend him. Right. Why suspend him when you could just fix what's there? Look at the Helen Joseph Hospital. One of the saddest things that we faced with is Old Mutual Foundation came forward and said, we can give you the funding to fix this hospital. To date, it's still not fixed. Yet this private sector which said, we will give you the funding. Just tell us where you want that funding spent. And government inefficiency to then just wrap the project quickly and just say these are the needs that we have, instead of just focusing on pretty projects, as it were.
Do you think politicians and government, maybe more specifically off the back of your point, these days feel that they're not actually accountable to the public? Government was voted in by the public, yet it doesn't seem like, some critics will say that government and politicians don't remember that they've been put there to provide a service. You are not there as a celebrity. You are there to provide a service. Do you think most politicians, I'm saying most because I don't feel like everyone's going to attack me on social media, do you think most politicians have forgotten that they're actually there to do a job?
One of the things that saddens me is how we tend to focus on offices, titles, and not actually the work that needs to be done. One of the reasons I get asked the question, why would the CEO go out into a community and do what you're doing, go and plant vegetable gardens with communities, go feed people? And I think it's a reminder of where we have been and where we've left many others. And I think the moment you focus on the politician being a minister of, a deputy minister of, instead of actually I come from a community. I'm South African first, and the part of it is about remembering or always reminding self about those who are still to journey with you, who are still to be with you where you are. And I travel the country to remind myself why I raise the funds that needs to be raised, why the team that I work with needs to work harder, why the board needs to hold us accountable for the work that needs to be done. And that accountability that you raise comes in many forms, and politicians are not exempted from that. And I think that's what we need to always be emphasizing, that all of us need to be accounting to someone. And until such time that we do that, it means that they will always remind themselves of their responsibilities to serve before you focus on who you are in society instead of...
I'm glad you mentioned, the word accountability. I want us to reflect, if you may, allow me, Sello, on a conversation you had with former President F.W. de Klerk, widely, seen, and also I think there was so much opinion, Gareth, on this conversation, particularly when the letter questioned if apartheid was even a crime against humanity. Do you think F.W. de Klerk, as a former leader of this country, a former president, obviously pre-democracy, took accountability at all during the conversation? What are your reflections?
One of the saddest moments for me was when Mr. de Klerk made the statement, and I immediately got in touch with him and his wife, and they then assured me that they were going to correct what he had said. Sadly, I don't think the correction was done well enough to also ensure that those who still believe that black people can be treated the way they are. Because if you look at the statistics that have been released by IGR, at some point 70 people of white people thought that apartheid, over 80 people, 80%, thought that apartheid was a crime against humanity. Now it's below 50%. Because we're beginning to forget that crime continues in Stellenbosch. Urine is used as a weapon of choice to demean, and a weapon of mass destruction on our nation-building project. And I think until such time that we then hold people accountable, past and present, these ghosts that Leon Wessels reflects on will continue to haunt us because we don't do enough work of reckoning with the past, but ensuring that we don't plant poison into the future.
Not that anything could ever justify, qualify, in any way erase what had happened, but when you talk about, you don't think that those last words from the former president did what it was supposed to. What would you like to have heard?
It could have been done earlier.
Sure.
So that's the important thing. It could have been done earlier, because he represented a community. He actually had followers who still believed that his voice carried more. And I think if it had been done earlier, it would have made a huge difference. But one of my mentors says that we can't keep arguing for a better past. Let's try to see how we argue for the future that we want. And part of that future is about saying, how do we ensure that AfriForum today understands that the apartheid flag is a symbol of hate? So those are struggles that we keep continuing. How do we ensure that the child of democracy in Stellenbosch understands that the use of urine is an instrument that was used in the past and it can't continue? How do we ensure that the family unit changes the way it thinks about itself and about others? Because it's what you pour in children's heads, in their minds, that they carry forward. If you pour hate, they carry it into school. If you pour love, they just carry it into school. And I think if we were to do more of that, we won't then have to reflect on the ghost of de Klerk. Instead, we'll be saying, how do I as Sello Hatang, how do you as Gareth help us reimagine a country we want?
How do we do that practically? And I'm saying this because tomorrow is Youth Day. We know the visuals that we'll be seeing in the media. Chances are Sarafina will be airing, will be reflecting on the youth of June 16. Definitely will be reflecting on everything else that happened against the black child in this country during apartheid, during the Bantu education system. And I suppose, black South Africans are saying, we want reconciliation, but we also want a conversation. We want the truth. We want transparency before we can move forward. I hear this a lot even on social media, people saying, why are people expecting black South Africans to forgive when, you know, the oppressor hasn't even asked for forgiveness or hasn't truthfully said, these are the events that transpired truthfully. So until that time comes for that conversation, I suppose we'll have this tit for tat where we're saying, you know, let's just sugarcoat and cover. So I'm asking you, how do we tangibly and practically get to that place that you talk of, that vision that you paint for us?
You know, one of the saddest things that we've done in our country, on the one hand, we failed the Constitution. And we keep forgetting that I am the Constitution. You are the Constitution. In other words, the written word that's there was just about ensuring that it gives us the blueprint of how we can be better people, but that we are the Constitution. The second one is how we failed the Truth Commission. The recommendations that were made were not carried forward in any meaningful way. That's why families now have to now go to court and demand some kind of justice. And I think until such time that there's political will to reckon with that past, Dumelo, we are not going to see the future we want. And to remind ourselves also that the work that we're doing today is not about you and I. It's about those who are still to be born, that they come and find themselves in a country that cares about those who are oppressed, but that their pain and their hurt is seen as having been dealt with effectively.
So we're going to start saying goodbye to you in a moment. So I want to make sure we just quickly talk about Trek for Mandela, because looking lean, looking fighting fit, it's going to be, what, the 5th time you're going up Kilimanjaro?
Yeah.
Tums and I will be there next year, just putting us out there.
I knew you were going to do that to me.
Very, very quickly. We're going to find some hiking boots. Very quickly, Trek for Mandela before we say goodbye. Happens every year. Is it losing its significance? Why are we still doing it? And just help me remind us why we're doing this still.
You know, we're doing it to help provide sanitary towels to girls out there, but also to give opportunities to girl children in terms of bursaries also. There are many girls who were identified by some of our corporate partners, and they got opportunities as a result. So there are graduates who have come out of this program. But in terms of sanitary wear, there's nothing as more satisfying as going to a school and you hand over sanitary pads and a child says to you, I wasn't sure how I was going to make tomorrow because my periods start tomorrow. You know, when I was a child at school, I always talk about how my mom was an advocate for education despite being illiterate herself, a domestic worker, single parent, all these things. And you know, men flu.
I've heard
Whenever
of
we
it.
have flu,
I've heard
There's
of it.
no such thing
we
as
actually die. You know, like we are about to be buried.
Oh my goodness!
And my mother will just take one look at us and say to the boys, "You're going to school. It doesn't matter." But to my sisters, she would let them off. I never understood why. Now looking back, I think the indignity of any parent to say to their child, you're not going to school today because I can't provide sanitary wear, must be one of the most humiliating things that my mother has gone through. So the things that we do with Imbumba Foundation today is to try to remind ourselves that no girl should go through what our sisters have gone through, and that those who are still to be born should never go through that also. So the tax on these kind of things need to be looked into, that we remove some of those taxes, that we make them free wherever possible, that these are things that are provided freely, just like we provide condoms.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
So that's what we're then trying to advocate.
We have to let you go soon, but I can't let you go before talking about this book. I know this to be true about Nelson Mandela. Sello Hatang has a book out, co-written with Vern Harris. I love, the picture in this book, but also your reflections. Just quickly tell us about the book.
Yeah, so the book is a reflection on what we thought about Madiba's leadership. A listener, a compassionate person, but also a flawed leader. One who says that you must, if you are to be a leader, have routines, develop some routines. If you are to wake up at 5 o'clock to exercise, even in a small cell, do it consistently, because it then gives you the consistency to, even when you make decisions. You can't make a big decision today, repudiate it the next day, because no one can trust you as a leader. So I think it's our reflection to say we can be leaders. All we need is each one of us is to then think of ourselves as leaders, that we can be like Nelson Mandela, because he was not perfect, but he represented that which we want to be on our best days.
Man. Can't wait to dig in. Thank you so much, Sello Hatang, for this. But can't believe, you know, it's simple things like habits that could turn you into CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Just habits.
Where have I got a close-up? Give me a camera one. There we go. Let's see if we can get a nice zoom in on that one. I know this to be true about Nelson Mandela. There's the book for you. Thank you, team. Get me out the shot. No one needs to see me. There's the new book by Sello Hatang. And we thank you as well. All the best with Kilimanjaro, by the way, as well. I'm sure we're going to follow that up as well. We may or may not have a member of our team going on the hike. It's Tumelo. No, I'm joking. It's not this. It's not this year. We'll get some hiking boots. We'll go next year. Sello, thank you very much,
thank you so much for
coming in to join us. Do not go anywhere. Daily poll comments next on the polar edition of the SA Morning. We're back in a moment.